Hello friends, it's Lisa and I'm back today to show watercoloring with ink pads. I'm focusing mainly on the Harmony ink pads, which are new from Spectrum Noir Crafter's Companion, but I do use these other three, the Distress Oxide, and the Archival Ink. I am actually working on a book, a little mixed media artsy paper crafty book. So it's going to be a window box kind of book. It's a little hard to explain, and I wanted to put pictures, but I haven't finished it yet. So I'm going to focus just on the watercoloring portion right now. Come back in 2 days to see the next layer, which will be ink smooshing, or no, not smooshing. It will be ink blending with these 4 different inks. But right now we're working on the watercoloring, so I'm taking these really cute stamps from Crafter's Companion in their fairy stamps. These are like onion dome kind of things, which are little houses, little fairy houses, how cute. And I'm going to also use a toadstool. I don't show you stamping that because it's literally the exact same. I went ahead and cut this out so I'd know exactly where it would fit. Like I said, it's a window book kind of thing, and so I needed it perfectly lined up. That's why you won't see me actually coloring that one, but I did need to ink up the stamp on that one or line it up. So then when I get my other ones that I'm going to watercolor, I'm going to stamp them in the exact same position. I'm using the We Are Memory Keepers stamp positioner, and I'm going to stamp them in the exact same place on an exact same piece of cardstock, like same size. It's the Bristol Smooth watercolor paper from Strathmore. I'm also marking in the area because I need to know where to put the hill, where I need watercolor and where I don't. So next I'm going to also tape off the bottom here so I don't get too much or get ink on below the hill line. Sorry, adjusting my light. And this time I'm using masking tape instead of washi tape. I find it a little bit easier to work with. Anyway, so I'm going to use my anti-static powder bag, use some Onyx Black ink from VersaFine, and stamp it down. I didn't get a perfect impression, and I'm not sure if it's the stamp press, the user, I don't know. So, but I had a little bit of issues with getting a really nice stamp, but I ended up with a nice one anyway. So I'll show this in an upcoming video, but what I'm going to do is watercolor this, which you're going to see now, and then I'll use my scan and cut to actually cut out the parts away. So here's the Harmony ink from Spectrum Noir, and they have a system where you get 3 ink pads of a similar color family with a light, medium, and dark, which is pretty cool. I only get ink pads that are like technique driven, unless it's black, and then I get it for other reasons so I can stamp sentiments and such. I have a couple of different black inks, but I only have these 4 types of ink: Distress Ink, Distress Oxide, Archival Ink, and now the Harmony ink, because they are technique inks. For me, that's important. I don't do a whole lot of layering stamps. You might have heard me before. I don't really like layering stamps. I can never get them lined up, but I do really like technique ink. I don't stamp a whole lot of stamps in colors. They're typically in black, or I emboss them, but I use a lot of different techniques with the ink pads. So I got these Harmony inks because they are technique inks. So you can do a lot of this cool stuff. That's what I'm really exploring this week. So if you want to come back for the ink blending and the ink smooshing, over the next couple days, then go ahead and subscribe and you'll be able to see that. And I'm really just trying to create something nice and play with my inks all at the same time. So here I am. I wasn't sure about these red ink pads because there's really only one red ink, the middle Chinese red. I wasn't sure how this was going to work out. I really wanted red for this toadstool top. It really needed to stand out against the very gray stalks of the mushrooms. But actually, it turned out great. You'll see that while the ink is wet on the paper, it blends beautifully. I think it blended better than the other 3 inks, to be honest, which I was really surprised with. I really like the Distress Oxide, and so I was like, this may not beat it. But I think blending capacity, it definitely does. Once it is dry, you can go back and add those harsh line details that you may want. But when it's wet, you're going to get seamless blending. So that was really fun. Something I hadn't expected. So here I am trying it because I'm impatient. Next, I'm going to grab some of the greens. You can probably tell this is sped up. It was 2 hours of film that I didn't want you to have to sit here for. So it's sped up 4 times the speed. Just so you know and are aware, I don't watercolor this fast, if only. So here I'm adding a little texture on the ground, and you'll see as it dries, it's not holding its shape. It's very much blending in. You get a mottled texture, but it's not harsh lines. I do go back and add just a little bit of the harsher lines at the top or over top, but that's because I wanted that. I really did like the mottled look as well in the background. Now I'm going to cut this blue sky away, but I couldn't help myself from trying. Since everything else looked so good, I was like, oh, I'll just try and see what a sky looks like. And then I was super sad because it turned out amazing. I was like, oh no, I'm going to cut this away. Why did I do this, But just with the shape of the book and which layer this is, I have to cut that out. But I was a little sad because it did come out so great. You can see I'm just doing horizontal stripes, and that really gives it a cloudy sky look. Very in the distance, there are clouds, but you're not really focusing on them. And like I said, this watercolor or this ink really blends well in together, and so you don't get the harsh lines. It's not like stripy, it just is a sky look. Then I added some Signo Uniball Signo white gel pen over the top to get the little white spots on the toadstool, and that's it for that one. Next, I'm using the onion domey things, and I'm going to use these browns, which I really like. I wish they had more browns. Wish they had more colors altogether. I ended up getting all but 3, I believe, of the Inkpad sets. They come in sets of 3. And, oh, you can see here, even if you're using not the same color family, or not one of the packs of 3 together, like I used that Oasis blue along with the greens to create the area down the hill, it blends perfectly together. So I got all but the grays, and I'll have to go ahead and buy those here soon because I liked these ink pads so much. I'm definitely going to be using these a lot. Really excited to have some really fun technique-y ink pads back in. So here is the end product of the toadstool. How cute did it come out? I was just like, oh my gosh, how am I going to cut that back off? Then here are the onion domes, and you can see I got a little out of the lines, but I didn't worry about it because it's going to come off. Next, let's look at the Distress Oxides, because these are probably, before I got the Harmony inks, these were definitely my favorite. Now that I've got the Harmony inks, I don't know. I can't say yet, but I can definitely say the Harmony ink pads are giving them, the Distress Oxide inks, a run for their money. So they have 12 new Distress Oxide colors out. I'm waiting because I'm cheap, and if I wait like a month, they'll be $20 cheaper to get the whole set. So I'm waiting a couple weeks, and then I'll get the new colors. But I have the whole line of Distress inks, and I'm so excited that by the end of the year I'll have the whole line of the Distress Oxides as well. So I decided to see if I could do a similar thing to the Harmony ink pads, where I picked 3 greens, a light, medium, and dark. You can see here that they're not exactly the same tonal value. So you get some differences. Not that that's better or worse, it just is different. You're not able to get quite the same effect as you can with the Harmony ink pads, but by getting one of each tone, you get a lot more variety of colors. So it's just kind of what you're wanting to do. But I did go ahead and try using the orange. Like I said before, the Harmony ink pad red 3 colors came with an orange, a very red, and then a similar Bordeaux maroon wine color. So I'm using the carved pumpkin, candied apple, and aged mahogany, which actually turned out really nice. I was a little worried at this point because the candy apple just looked orange over top, but adding the aged mahogany really reddened it up. But you will see on the green, I was able to get a pretty good blend, but on the top of the toadstool, you can see those harsh lines, as well as on the stalk of the toadstool, you'll see the blending is not near as seamless as it was with the Harmony ink pads. So, just something I noticed. You've probably watercolored with Distress Oxides if you have them, because the Distress Oxides are really nice, but I think that the Harmony ink pads watercolored a little bit better than they did in the Distress Oxide. Just a little bit, but they did. Next, I'm coloring the sky because I colored it on the first one, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to see how it looks, how it compares. If you want to see all of the photos side by side, you can head over to my blog. There'll be a link in the blog, in the part down below, little description box, but it's terrylisacreates.com, and you can see these photos up close and look at them and can kind of compare side by side. So here we go with the onion ball ones, which I know they're not onion balls. They're some kind of flower because onions grow on the ground, I believe. I really hate onions. I don't eat them at all, so I would never think of gardening them. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure they grow on the ground. But these are some kind of flower, but they look like onion domes to me. Anyway, so I used those colors, you saw them, you can go back. The peeled paint and the bundled sage, I wanted to continue in the same kind of colors that I did with the first one, with the Harmony inks, because I really wanted to see how things turned out side by side. You can see here that blending the broken china into the bundled sage doesn't work quite as well. They don't blend quite as seamlessly. But overall, it turns out awesome. So here is the end product of the toadstool. It's still so cute. And next we're moving on to the Distress Ink. So first they had the Distress Ink, then they came out with the Distress Oxide. Just a reminder. So the Distress Ink is dye ink, just like the Harmony ink pads. So I was wondering how similar or different they were going to be. They're actually pretty different. I would say the Harmony ink pads seem to feel somewhere in between the Distress Ink and the Distress Oxide, just in how they went on. The results you got, kind of. So here I am using the Hickory Smoke and Gather Twigs. I tried to use the same colors as the Distress Oxides that I just used. And you'll see I didn't really have a third color with either the Distress Oxide or Distress Ink that I could use. I think I accidentally got the Distress Oxide, so I had to go back and get the Distress Ink of that same color, because the way I have my ink pads stored, it's Distress Ink, Distress Oxide, Distress Ink, Distress Oxide. So it keeps things a lot more organized, but sometimes I grab the wrong type of ink pad. So I'm using my Tim Holtz Tonic Studios grid mat, and this is on the glass part. I took the other mat off, which I keep almost all the time because when I'm working on my computer, that's where my mouse sits. But I really like the all glass mat, and once I get my craft room back, which I'm excited to say is coming along, so hopefully soon I can show you my new awesome craft room, and it'll be exciting. But for now, it's just my bedroom, sadly. So anyway, here you can also see these aren't blending as smoothly. I think that they dry a bit quicker. Just the Distress in general dries a bit quicker than the Harmony ink pads do, which is good and bad, but if you want to do techniques, sometimes you want it to stay wet a little bit longer. So next I'm just using some squeezed lemonade and peacock feathers to color the door and the windows, just so it looks like somebody's home. They have the little lights on. Oh, it's so cute. Anyway, so you can see that the carved pumpkin on the roof came out a lot lighter than the Distress Oxide, just something I noted. But this watercolor paper, the Bristol Smooth, which is much smoother than most watercolor paper that I use, it works very well with all these ink pads. You get a very smooth look. So that was something I noted and liked. Next, I am going to color the sky, I believe. But yeah, I'm moving around my craft room trying to get the right colors. So here we go. I have the Broken China and the Salty Ocean again, just with the Distress ink. And we're going to see what that looks like on the background. I did not do a background on the last one. You'll kind of see I had some issues with the Archival Ink. It doesn't work exactly the same way that these other 3 ink pads work, which they're all very similar, but you're getting different results. Oh, my mom called, so I had to stop filming. But I did do the Onion Dome the exact same way. The ink did blend a little bit better than the Distress Oxide ink on the hill on the Onion Dome. So on the Archival inks, they work a little bit differently. I haven't played much with these, but I have them because they supposedly stamp well on non-porous surfaces. So I did the same thing and was using some water to watercolor these on, and I was having a lot of issues. You can see how light that came off. But then I was trying to clean off my brush because I was about to give up, and I used some hand sanitizer because that usually works. And putting the hand sanitizer in actually allows you to watercolor with this. So the more you know, right? I decided to go ahead and try that. I still wouldn't pop these bad boys out just to watercolor. To be honest with you, it was a lot more pain than it was worth. So on this one, I didn't color the blue sky, the background. I made it through. This was a lot more painful, and it was the very last one that I was doing, and I was like, I do not have the patience for this. So I'm not saying that archival inks aren't great, but they're great for other things. Maybe not so much the watercolor effect. So I'm using the Shadow Gray and Coffee to do the stock of the toadstool. I only did the one color on the top, the red. Well, there's a couple colors underneath that red, but they don't show up. They were when I was trying to use water to watercolor with these. So next I'm going to use the ground, do the ground, and I'm using these three colors, the Vivid Chartreuse, Leaf Green, and Library Green, which I really love the colors on these. I need to find some cool stuff to do with them, so maybe I'll try and figure out really what to do with these inks. So hopefully I can come up with some good, fun, exciting techniques to do with these. But watercolor is not going to be one of them, I'm going to be honest. So we're continuing on, and I'm going to skip ahead in just a second. I do the exact same thing. I use my white Signal Ball gel pen to color the top, color in the windows and the door, and you can see the little under the window box thing. I just put green there. I mixed the blue and the yellow that I had out, made a little green, and put it right there. So even though using the hand sanitizer did make it much more vivid, it was still just somewhat vivid. Now you can see here, I am trying really hard with this tiny little brush, but I didn't want to ruin any of my bigger brushes, and it is just painful, painful, painful. So I give up and I start using my finger, which actually worked pretty well. So maybe watercoloring with the hand sanitizer and your finger is doable, but using a brush, especially a tiny little one, not worth it. Just go ahead and use your finger, or even better, get a different type of ink pad. I would suggest the Harmony or the Distress Oxide, or even the Distress Ink. But this was just painful. So, and I keep showing you just how painful it was. It was painful. I'm hoping the next couple techniques will go a lot better for the Archival Ink, because this one did not. These are the only 4 types of ink pads that I have. I'm sure you could watercolor with regular old dye ink pads, but I don't have any. So here is the end of the video. Thanks so much. Remember to go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming videos with the Harmony ink pads, as well as the other 3 where I'm doing the next couple techniques to finish my book, as well as the finished book where I show you how I create it all together. So thanks so much for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.